Welcome back, everybody, to conversation number 75. And today we are welcoming Daphne. Daphne, welcome. We're so excited to have you. Daphne is going to be talking to us today about why experimentation is like making lemonade. For those of you who don't know Daphne, well, you should. Daphne is one of my favorite people. And Daphne is started out as one of the first employees of Rock Boost, a growth hacking agency. And after consulting various startups and corporations for more than 5 years, and she helped grow Rock Boost to more than 25 employees, she wrote a book about growing happy clients. Then she moved to the brand side, helped Brain Care start up Heights, scaling it from 28K to 343K in 18 months. Now she helps the best eco-friendly and wellness D2C startups grow faster. But my favorite facts about Daphne is that her claim to fame is she got to play an extra with, Voldemort, aka, most of us know him as Voldemort, but, Ralph Fiennes. And you can probably tell from her little movie fact that she's a bit of a Harry Potter fan. She loves physical challenges. She's climbed Kilimanjaro. She's completed the London Marathon, and she's done a half marathon. She's known at Conversion Hotel as the one who does the early morning swimming in the really cold, I mean, y'all, it is really cold, icy sea. And when I asked her for fun facts, she didn't say anything about this, y'all. But she's also the co-founder of the Women in Experimentation, which, if you are a woman in experimentation, you need to be a part of this community. It supports women so well. It is an amazing community. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And the Women in Experimentation Conference, co-sponsored or sponsored by Convert, is June 6th. It is an amazing event, and everybody should be a part of it. Thank you, Daphne, for everything you do for the experimentation community and for women everywhere. We love you. Thank you. I'm going to stop here and pass it over to you.
Thank you, Kelly, for such a kind introduction. I hope I can live up to that. And what I think you didn't mention is that TLC has been super, super supportive of the Women in Experimentation Summit. Kelly went through over 70.
I did something terrible. I didn't thank our sponsors. I'm so sorry. Before you start,
go first.
Thank our sponsors, because it's a big deal. We have a new sponsor, y'all. We have a new sponsor. So I always have to thank Conductrix. They're our first sponsor. And I want to thank Epo and Chameleon for sponsoring our newsletter. But we have a new sponsor, y'all. Thank you, Eddie of Blazing Growth. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Eddie, for being our new sponsor for the TLC. Take it away. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I was just going to say, like, Kelly has also been really, really great with preparing the summit. She reviewed over 70 applications of different talks, which was a lot of work, but has resulted in 10 incredible speakers. And it's a free online summit. So definitely hope to see you there. It's on the 6th of June. And if it's not in the Slack group, we can share it there. But today we are going to be talking about why experimentation is like making lemonade. And this is where you can see that a small thought trail kind of went a bit extreme, because a few years ago I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about like growth and experimentation. I was like, it actually has a lot of similarities with squeezing lemons and making lemonade, because the end results are very rewarding, whether you're enjoying, on a hot day, and it's sadly not too hot in London, but a hot day, a nice cold cup of lemonade, or you're using it to make a cocktail, which for those of you who have your lemons, you could maybe use lemon juice for later, because it is Friday, but it might still be early by some people. So in that case, stick to some lemon water. But at the same time, it's also really messy. Whenever I'm like, I'll just quickly squeeze a lemon, I end up with lemon juice everywhere. And once a very, very deep cut in my finger, and ended up having to get to an emergency room. So it gets messy. And it's the same with experimentation. We get excited about the end result, but it's messy along the way. And I think like there's a lot more that we need to do than just squeeze a lemon. Like, whilst that's the first part, there's also different ways that people approach this and different types of lemon squeezes. And you can see how far I went with this analogy, because I also decided that there were actually two different types of lemon juices I'd come across, and also two different types of experimenters. And it was not that one was better than the other, but rather we needed both to make the best lemonade. And so the first type of lemon juicer, and maybe we're not going to squeeze the lemons yet, keep your lemons, this is coming later, but the first type is the planner, and maybe you'll recognize with this, but a planner lemon juice squeezer is rather like this person. They wouldn't do it like that. They're very precise about it. They carefully cut it all up. They wouldn't end up with a huge cut in their finger like I did. They'd take it step by step, really getting every single little bit out of that lemon, being very precise. And so planners are really, really great lemon squeezers. Like if you think about they're like one of these automatic fancy Smeg ones, which when I first did this presentation, I was like, I'm getting one of these one day. I still want to get one of these because they're perfect. They get every single drip out, and they're very detail oriented, focusing on perfecting. They're often deep specialists in their area. And when they have clear directions and KPIs, they just go, go, go. If they know what they need that lemon juice for, they're all good to go. But there's the other type, the explorers. And in case you haven't guessed by my little story early on, I'm definitely an explorer. I'm more like this guy, not as fast, but definitely more like this, kind of a chaotic, very, kind of like the more raw tool, just go and get it done. And explorers are very outcome focused. They're very data driven. They're hackers over crafters, and they often have this broader knowledge. And try to think along when you're hearing this. Are you more the planner type when it comes to experimentation, or explorer? And I believe one is not better than the other. We really need both to succeed. And so what I want to show you today, and what we're going to play for you, hopefully for those who have lemons, go along with, is learn about those 3 principles to get the most out of your lemons and to make use of these different types of lemon squeezers in your experimentation team, to get better results and more out of the things you're testing. And the first principle to doing that is just not giving up the first time you squeeze the lemon. So for those of you who have lime, other citrus fruit, feel free to grab it now. Grab a glass, ideally, so it doesn't go everywhere. And just give your lemon one little squeeze. And I can already see lemon juice going everywhere here. But if you give your lemon one little squeeze, just one, not more than that, you'll probably notice you've got a bit of juice out of there. You've got a little bit of lemon. No worries that I just saw in the chat that you're late. Good to join. We've just given our lemon a first squeeze. And there's just a little bit, but there's not a huge amount out. And it's the same with experimentation. When we're testing things out, not everything's going to work, and not everything is always a juicy lemon. Some things work and some things don't, and they're what we like to then call learnings. And what we usually end up doing is we get really excited when we have these wins, and we double down on them and enjoy them. But just because not a lot came out of this lemon the first time, and this is where the tissue comes in handy, it doesn't mean it's a dud lemon. Sometimes those so-called learnings can hide future wins. And this is something that I've really noticed is we're so quick to dismay the things that aren't working, moving on, and we give up that first time that we squeeze the lemon. And it's because we see these things as failures rather than learning. And I really saw this firsthand. So as Kelly mentioned, I used to be a head of growth of a startup, and we had this big plan to test this area that I'm going to talk about in a second, but it didn't necessarily work on the first time. And this is something that those explorers and the planners can really struggle with, because with explorers, we're taught to trust the data. We're very data driven. So if something's not working, it's okay, that's not working. Let's move on to the next thing. But planners also struggle with this because they are more comfortable with that clear direction and that clear KPIs. And when something isn't working and out of their comfort zone, they might find it harder to keep testing more of that and want to move on to the next thing as planned versus continue with something that doesn't work. So what does that look like in practice? Well, when I was at Heights, one thing that we realized that wasn't really working for us was our value proposition. And as Kelly mentioned, Heights is a brain care company, and what it basically means is it's very focused on everything around supporting you taking care of your brain. The main product is a brain care supplement, and they now have a secondary product, which is a gut health supplement, but all focused on the gut and brain connection. So everything that Heights was doing when I joined them as head of growth was talking about the brain. What is brain health? What is brain care? Brain care versus brain health. And we were talking brain on our sales page, on our product page, everywhere. But what did people actually care about? When we looked at the reviews, we were seeing almost no one was ironically mentioning the brain, but instead they were saying, oh, it helps me feel more alert. It helps me sleep better. My mood is stabilized. I'm able to do more of the things I love. And so we were like, okay, this isn't working. We need to really reevaluate this and take a step back. And so we spent 6+ hours of of working as a growth team on this value proposition, and it was a huge project. And the result of that 54 hours, because there were 19 members, was that we came up with 2 new value propositions, 2 new approaches, and this was our first squeeze of the lemon. The first was that we were going to compare that overall copy of on our homepage of, heightening your energy, focus, sleep, and memory. So talking about your brain does this, we aren't feeding our brain, to more gained focus. So we still had a bit of like the brain in there, but we were trying to focus it a bit more on like the struggle of like, hey, life is hectic. It's going to help you with these 3 key areas. And the second approach of what we saw coming out of all our research was this convenience angle. So the fact that the supplement had 20 different nutrients in 2 pills, you didn't have to take it with food. It was a combination of things that people usually couldn't get in one supplement because it was like an inner and outer layer. And so we were like, okay, maybe this is what they really enjoy about it. It's like, okay, your brain actually likes it easy, all in one, high quality. And so we tried this out. We gave that lemon a first squeeze. And as I've hinted at, it was not working. It was traveling non-significant a week later, and I let the test run its course, but it didn't get better than this. It was not doing well. And we were just scratching our heads. We were like, what is going on? What the hell is this? And this is Loki. This is my dog. And he looks at me like this anytime I do something which he just doesn't understand. He's like, what are you doing? And that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh my God. And as an explorer, I was just thinking like, you know what? I can't believe this failed. Maybe it's not as big an issue as I thought. Like, I just had this new role. I was really keen for this big project to succeed. And the first big experiment we did after all this research wasn't working. But luckily, we weren't a team of just explorers. We also had people who are planners, people who are mixed, because not everyone is one or the other. Most people are probably a mix or somewhere in the scale of it. And we had Jules, who is more of a planner. And she basically was like, you know what, we just need to dig deep into details. We just need to really work out what makes a great value proposition and try again. We're still staying too close to home. We're still playing too safe. Let's just revisit it and really dive into the details. And we've had really good talent. She is working in product at Heights. She basically went back to the drawing board, and together with also a different copywriter, basically reevaluated everything, like what was driving our product market fit, why did people love it, what was the core of what our value proposition should be, what were the patterns we were seeing, and really doubled down on it. And the second attempt was a lot further away from that initial, and was talking more about like starting really with that feeling, like feel more alert, feel more focused, feel more energy with like a rotating header. And this made a huge difference when we tested it on the home and the product page. We were suddenly seeing way bigger, significant lifts from this. And all I can think at the time is like, thank God we didn't give up after that first squeeze. Thank God we also listened to the planners to understand what wasn't working, to keep testing this, and to see where it went. And the difference, like this isn't the actual amount, but just to give you an example, like if we were with 500 customers at the beginning per week, that would mean 610. It was overall 22% potential lift across those experiments. And that was huge for us as a smaller startup. But how do you actually know if there's more juice in the lemon? Because, there might be more juice in this lemon, or it might have just been a dud. I might have just got what was in there after that first squeeze. For that, I think what's really important, what we don't do enough because sometimes we get into run mode, is asking those right questions. Like, what is actually the hypothesis? What is the quantitative and qualitative data of what we're seeing? how are we actually analyzing it afterwards? What did we learn? And how is that feeding into our following experiments? And they might seem like very obvious questions to ask, but I think it's, like I said, it's easy for us explorers, especially, but also sometimes the planners, to just continue because it feels uncomfortable when it's not working. So really deconstructing those results of like, was it the right audience we were targeting with it? Was our messaging, in this case, speaking to them? Were we testing it in the right place or the right platform? Did we actually get that messaging right? How did we explain what we were doing? Was there too much friction of what we were asking them to do? How did we execute it? And looking at all these different angles to really understand, like, what were the potential reasons that this didn't work? And for this, I always like to remind people, like, a high win rate isn't always good. Like, yes, a very low one isn't great either, but if we have too high win rate, if we feel like every single time we squeeze a lemon, it should be a huge success on the first go, it just means we're not taking risks and we're learning less. And that's why those experiments that don't work are as important, if not more important, to the ones that do. So how do we use our two different types of lemon juices? Well, firstly, we allow the explorers to set up the tests because they're the ones who are good at moving faster, taking that data and trying things out and taking risks. But then we get the planners involved and we let them to help analyze and work out the next steps, just like we did with like Jules, where she really dived in deep to understand what was and wasn't working to help drive the next steps and continue testing around an area. Principle 2, really squeeze the lemon. So for those of you with some form of citrus fruit, it's time to grab that again and give it another second squeeze. Now I'm getting pits going out everywhere. And a third, and a fourth, maybe a fifth. My lemon's starting to crack. And a sixth. We've got a lot more lemon juice now. And it kept coming out with every second, third, and fourth, and fifth experiment. And that's why it's key that we just really, really squeeze the lemon. And even when we have a win, for example, and we're keen to move on to that next lemon as explorers, that we take the time to really get everything out of it that's in there. So with explorers and planners, if we look at an area that we're focusing on, and this can be a certain like theme, like with the value proposition, it can be a certain part of the website. Are we trying to improve trust? We can think about like, there's the scale of 0 to 10 of an area that we're working on. And with 0, we've gotten nothing out of it yet. And with 10, we've really maximized every single bit out of it. Now, explorers are great at that first part. They're great at doing that first squeeze of testing things out, but they can get a bit distracted by the second lemon half and the rest are new lemons. And as a result, like the planners are really, really good at doing that second, third, fourth, fifth squeeze, making sure that we're really getting everything out of what we're doing. And I think like what you'll notice throughout this is that it's really about not seeing one as better than the other, but helping them play to their strengths when we're approaching experimentation to get more out of it. So with that first experiment, if we go back to that, or second experiment technically, go back to that heights, like after that, we basically saw this 22% lift, and it would be really easy to be like, great, yes, party time, done it, all good. But like those kind of lists, like they're a lot higher than what you'll probably see with a big organization. I work with startups, which means we have the fun thing that we see bigger lists, but we don't always have the data to test. So, you know, those kind of lists, they're showing elasticity. They're more than what we're seeing on average from the other things. There's something there. There's something more to it. And it takes so much less effort and time to build on what's working versus always trying to find a new juicy lemon, always trying to find something else. And that's something else that I think we aren't doing enough with experimentation, is really building on that first experiment and getting more and more out of an area. So that's what we did at Heights after that first experiment. We basically, because of the lack of traffic, like I said, that's the downside to startup life. We used ads instead to basically run different versions of the proposition and test different things out with the same imagery, but setting it up as an experiment in Meta to keep testing different propositions. And each time, as we tested different approaches, we'd see certain ones standing out in terms of what was driving a better click-through rate, what was driving lower cost per click, and driving quality traffic to the website. we kept testing and testing and testing and iterating. Like we were running ads anyways to drive sales. And so we really use those campaigns to narrow down that value proposition, get really, really specific. Like even once we found the angle that was working, getting even more specific about how we phrased that, how we brought it across. And as you saw with the previous photo, like, do we focus more on the pains that they're struggling with, more the gains, and really challenging ourselves to get better at that. And the result was that when we then were able to test on the website, we had what's less usual, but we had a series of wins because we'd already pre-tested it and had all the losses on Meta and when we were testing it via email too. But we had multiple lifts after that that were hugely impactful in fine-tuning that value proposition on the homepage, product page, and improving it step by step. And if we then compare what would have happened if we stopped after that first squeeze versus after that, the lift was, or the potential lift was so much bigger than that. And we were seeing also these differences in the results we were getting. And if anything, it was more than this, because this wasn't even including like all the other places that we improved it. Like we improved it in our ads, which had a positive impact. We improved it in our email, in our social comms, everywhere across the customer journey. We got better and better at applying this. And that had a huge impact. So to really squeeze the lemon is to go hard once you find that initial success, and to keep doing that second, third, and fourth, and fifth, and sixth squeeze. Again, we can use our different types of lemon juices for this. We can have our explorers help us find those juicy lemons and those opportunities, and the planners to really squeeze everything out of it and get the most out of it. But there's one last principle. If you now take your lemon and you try to give it another squeeze, hopefully you can see it a bit, but only a few drops came out for me. Not that much anymore. My lemon is pretty much finished with 5 pits in the glass. And so that's why I think this last principle is really key, of limiting shiny oranges. And sometimes when I talk about this, I like to have oranges in the background and a bottle of tequila to see who gets distracted by those, because I know those are my explorers, but it doesn't quite work with my room here, sadly. And I do have tequila in house, but instead, who got distracted by the orange on the screen potentially. I think when we talk about like shiny object syndrome, we give it a really bad rep. We compare it to like this, like, you know, these kind of dogs of like, hey, let's, you know, focus on our marketing priorities and not get distracted by every shiny, oh, look, a squirrel. And the irony is that I think I'm quicker distracted by a squirrel with having ADHD than my dog is. But it is true. We give it a bad rep of like, hey, we shouldn't get caught up. We need to focus. And that's definitely true. Like if we are giving up after that first squeeze, we're missing out a lot if we keep switching to new lemons and new oranges. But what we don't talk about enough, and that's probably because it's not a real syndrome, but I've invented it, dull object syndrome. And that's the fact that after a while, we kind of have these diminishing returns. You know, performance at first improves, but as you saw with the lemon, like when we gave it that last squeeze, there wasn't much left in there. And so there's also this risk of dull object syndrome, where we keep optimizing and focusing on these same areas that we always have been doing because that's what we know and that's what we're comfortable with, but that the returns start to drop. You know, and when it comes to like that value proposition, like that might already now be at an 8, and so might already be at a high level, but it might no longer be the biggest impact because we've already worked on it so much. We've run all those tests, we've improved it a huge amount, we've gotten lifts, and the tests that follow weren't showing that kind of impact anymore because we'd already got it at that point in time to a way better place than other things that were impacting our growth and opportunity areas, like potentially building better trust with our audience, or working on what is our initial offering for new customers. Do we have the right offering for that? And as a result, like, it's important that we don't get into this dull object syndrome. Here we can use again our 2 different types. The explorer to help identify potential and test potential shiny oranges and new opportunities. And the planners to double check that those shiny oranges have had their research first, that we aren't just like, oh, this competitor is doing this, we should do this, or this is the new thing, or I saw this somewhere, we should do this. But really to double check that all the research has been done to really understand those new oranges and the opportunities there. And it's about finding a balance. And the way I like to do this is I like to think about like all the areas like I did with the graph before, and just thinking of it like 1 to 10, like where are we now? And not being afraid to shift that focus. And for the planners, that's less comfortable, but hopefully the explorers can help support them on that. And doing what I like to call a Marie Kondo to limit the number of experimentation or growth areas that you're working on. I don't know who knows Marie Kondo. She's great. I think she did wonders for my relationships because she's a cleaning guru and tidying guru, and finally taught me how to organize stuff. And what she talks about is like when we get something new in our house, we need to think about what are we getting rid of. And so I think it's the same with like experimentation growth. It's like if we want to get new opportunities in, that's okay. But can we remove old areas? So we're not spreading ourselves too thin, but we're saying, hey, this is a good place, like with the value proposition. Let's now move on to something else that's going to be higher impact. And just Marie Kondo in the amount of areas that we're focusing on. And the other question she always asks, which sounds a bit silly, but like when you're like looking at a jumble or something you want to keep, does it still spark joy? Does it actually spark joy for you? And if it does, then it's a good enough reason to keep it. But I think it's the same with like growth and experimentation areas. Instead of joy, does it still spark growth? Does it still drive an impact? And that can help us really think about like, hey, is this actually something we should still focus on? So to really summarize and bring it all together, how can you become a better lemon juicer and not end up cutting your fingers, but really getting a very full glass of lemon juice? You need to remember that it's all about finding those right lemons. It's about identifying those best lemons for you to drive that impact. And that you need both types of lemon juices. When I first joined Heights, I was so frustrated by the planners because I thought they were blocking all my ideas. They were slowing stuff down because I was in a team of a lot of planners. But as you saw, like with that first example of the value proposition, they were actually crucial to our success and growth. And I don't think we would have grown so fast if we'd only had explorers. I've experimented with only explorers, and it's like a constant game of me trying to play the planner of like, let's get the focus back. We're going too far, too many different things. Like, what is actually going to drive impact? So we need both types. And we need to embrace the strengths of both of them. And like I said, no one is necessarily 100% explorer, 100% planner. And some people are a mix, but it's about seeing those strengths of both of them and getting the best out of them in terms of how they approach risk, how they structure things, what their knowledge is, how their attention to detail is, and using those to decide what each person should focus on. And I believe that both of them lead to strong growth, strong experimentation process, because explorers will help us challenge the way we work. They'll find new opportunities, they'll bring new ideas to the table and drive change and improvements. But the planners will help also push for a process and organization, which is so key to the success. And they'll make sure that we get more out of those existing areas and also have that focus and not be going from one shiny orange to the next. So to just remind you all, the lemon principles are: don't give up the first time if not much juice comes out. Don't be deterred by that. Really, really squeeze the lemon. Give it that second to sip for more squeezes. And don't be afraid to add some shiny oranges to the mix, but try to limit them to get the most out of it. And end of the day, like growth and experimentation, they'll always be slightly chaotic, but it's about building that system to get the most out of those lemons and oranges as a team together. Thanks.
Awesome, Daphne. Awesome as always. This was fantastic. So far we have Matt slightly tongue-in-cheek asking British lemonade or American?
Sorry, the British lemonade. I don't know. What is it? I guess, what is the difference?
So British lemonade is quite a bit more tart, and American lemonade is very, very sweet.
I'm gonna go with British personally. I have to be honest. I can't
Oh,
handle.
Matt says no, British lemonade is sparkling.
Oh, I think that works too. I think both work. Both lemonades are great. But even better, and this is something that I still at some point want to do on stage, is that we use lemons or limes to make a cocktail or mocktail altogether, because that would be even more fun.
I didn't, Matt, I've had sparkling in the States many times. He's typing
You can tell
slowly.
it's a Friday because all the questions are like not about the experimentation, but like, what kind of
Like,
lemonade do we prefer, guys?
I know, right?
That's fair. It's been a long week.
No, but he actually had another point, which you can actually see in both Zoom and Slack, which is that you got to prep and pre-process the lemon or lime by giving it a hard roll kneading, which I thought was frankly analogous to preparing your data and doing your research, which is why I made him put it in the TLC calls too.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I think that's a great point, and that is actually something that I've had called out before, and I still forget it every time. Explorer, I want to go straight to squeezing the lemon. I was honestly thinking it earlier today. I was like, got to remember to roll it because all the lemons were so hard in the stored. I was like, what if I go and I'm like trying to squeeze it and nothing is coming out? And then I was like, that wouldn't matter because that would also be, a learning. So that's also
exactly.
fun.
And now I'm going to take my lime juice and just pour it right in here in my water bottle. So it's nothing wasted.
Yeah,
Pour
please
it.
don't waste it. Please enjoy it. I'm gonna have a little shot of lemon juice and try not to get seeds.
Yeah, I did message my son downstairs and ask him to bring up my lemon green, but I don't think I want to use lime juice with it. I wish I had my lemon, but my husband used it, but that's fine.
I
Um,
hope, I hope there were some others who were able to follow along with the lemon
yeah, yeah.
live.
I don't know how many people, other people, but I have lime juice all over my hands and arms, so that's fun. Um,
Experimentation message.
no, it was actually quite fun. Uh, Jose asked, how should we approach situations when most people in the organization seem to be looking for lemons in a garden that only have apples? How should we refocus them on looking for lemons?
And in your analogy, what are the apples? Are they like not as juicy? Because I feel like apples are juicy. They just need a different type of juicer. I've had someone squeeze an apple when they didn't have a lemon. I thought that was really, really die hard of them to like use the apple in it. But just so I understand the question, like, what jokes aside, like, is it that they're focusing on the wrong areas, or
Jose, feel free to take yourself off mute if you want.
It's more like they're looking to test thing in areas that have low potential for delivering results. It's like they have a fixed idea to say, okay, this is what we want to test because that's in our plan for this year. But maybe that's not what is going to give you the most bang for your bucks.
yeah? So
Is the juice worth the squeeze?
yeah, yeah. Okay, no, I get what you mean with it. So I always think like with this is definitely like the challenging stakeholder management thing. And so what I always try to do is like I actually treat like, and this sounds maybe a bit like cold or analytical, but like I try to treat like the stakeholders who are then driving those decisions almost as like a persona, like a target audience, and try to understand like what are their pain points, what are they hoping to achieve, and what's getting in the way of that. And then also to try and understand what like persuasion language convinces them. Because I think sometimes as experimenters, we love data and we present then like, hey, we should do this because it's going to have this bigger impact. And we list all these numbers and we're like, this is not going to drive it, can't you see? But that's our language. But some people are convinced more by like the emotion side, actually seeing customers struggle with things. And for those people, actually showing them like a recorder of a user struggling with something, or giving stories and showing like written feedback from customers can be more powerful. And for others, it's more like about, well, what are the best doing? And it's so annoying because then you have someone external come in and say the same thing and they're suddenly like, yes. But that's because they're like driven by this kind of like authority, or like, they believe like, hey, someone else has it worked out, or I really like this competitor. And then you can use that to convince them. So that's kind of what I would do, is like I try to work out like, well, what is like important to them, what will actually drive them to focus more on what I think are then the potential lemons, and then try to find the right language to convince them, hey, it's worth giving this a test. And then like, I think the final thing is the same thing, like as when we want to drive customers to have action, is like removing the friction as much as possible, making it like a smaller step, like rather than immediately saying, hey, we should dump all the apples and we're going from making apple juice to making lemon juice. Like, hey, why don't we test adding 1 lemon or 2 lemons, a few lemons in the mix, because we don't know if that 1 lemon is going to work, but we'll try to choose something where we have that confidence, we have a lot of research to show there's potential, and try to convince them with like smaller little steps. And then once we start to see that working, be able to expand it step by step. I hope that helps. It is a really tricky one, and it really depends per case, but hopefully there's some advice in there that can help with it.
Yeah. As we if anyone else has questions, feel free to pop them in. But while y'all are thinking through that, I want to talk through some upcoming big events, including, by the way, I posted the link for the Women in Experimentation Conference, June 6th, which registration is free and open to everybody. So y'all should be registering to attend. It's an amazing event. The TLC is one of the partners. So yes, please be a part of that. But also our next TLC event is about hypotheses and why they're maybe overrated. Are they? I don't know. That's Shiva, May 17th. And Experimentation Culture Awards is May 23rd. And that is also a free event online. Please, everybody, register. Who's gonna win next events? I don't know. Y'all should register. That's a online event as well. And if you register, you can find out who's going to win this year, and you can also get the recording and everything if you're not able to attend during the time slot. And then the next TLC event after that is Hidden Hazards, when client side experimentation issues go unnoticed with Joey Kant. That's July 12th. But actually, I just don't have all the stuff on there because June 6th is the Women in Experimentation Conference. But June 11th, the TLC mentorship panel, mentorship summit is going to be in Birmingham. And that's just not on the event calendar yet because I'm frantically working to get all of these out there. And June 11th and 12th is the Experimentation Elite, which is where the mentorship summit is going to be. So join us, please. The registration is open now, and we'd love to see you. Conductrix is our sponsor for the TLC Mentorship Summit in Birmingham. Thank you, Conductrix. Thanks, Matt. Thanks all the crew for helping us out. We're really excited about that event. And hope to see as many of you there as possible. It's going to be a lot of fun. Any last questions? Thanks, Matt. Any last questions for Daphne? Otherwise, I'm going to let everybody have an early weekend and do something with that juice you squeezed. I'm not saying you can pour it in your whiskey, but it's 5 o'clock somewhere. What time is it for you, Daphne?
It's nearly 6, so.
See? I know what Daphne's going to do with her lemon juice. So I'm just saying.
I downed it already, but I have the other half. So
there we go.
Pim's cup. Oh yeah, Pim's is amazing. Pim's is a great mixer with lemonade in the UK. I don't think it's as popular in the US, right?
I've never heard of it, but Matt spent a significant amount of his time in that area.
When I see you at Experimentation Elite in Birmingham, we can have some Pims.
There you go. There we go. All right. Thank you all. Have a great weekend. Take care. Thanks, Daphne.